Imagine if an acrylic paint set was created specifically for the GRIMDARK style, where every colour is carefully selected to capture the dark, gritty colour palettes that define the aesthetic. Now imagine if this set was crafted in collaboration with none other than John Blanch. I think the army painter might just have answered that question. If you've ever dipped your toe into the GRIMDARK style, then I'm sure you've all heard the name John Blanch pop up. So who is John Blanch? John Blanch is a renowned British fantasy artist and illustrator, best known for his influential work with Games Workshop, where he played a pivotal role in shaping the visual aesthetics of Warhammer and the Warhammer 40,000 universe. His distinctive style, often referred to as Blanchitsu, is characterized by dark, gothic and intricate imagery that has significantly impacted the miniature wargaming and fantasy art communities. John Blanch is the father of us all, a true legend among legends when it comes to the GRIMDARK style. His visionary work has been a constant source of inspiration, shaping not only my own creative journey, but also the works of countless GRIMDARK artists across the globe. His influence runs deep, laying the foundation for a legacy that will continue to inspire and define the GRIMDARK aesthetic for generations to come. John Blanch has teamed up with the army painter to create something truly unique, the John Blanch Masterclass Series paint sets Volume 1 and 2. These collector's edition sets are a curated selection of the army painter's war paints Fanatic, speed paints and special effects paints, all handpicked by John himself alongside exclusive brand new colours developed under his guidance. Each paint set offers exclusive colours designed with John's input, professional grade pigments for a rich and smooth application, premium collector's packaging featuring original artwork by John Blanch, and 10 unique paints in each set, perfectly tailored for the GRIMDARK aesthetic. So let's dive in and take a closer look at the boxes, and one of the first things that you'll notice is these beautiful artwork around the box, and these are some original pieces by John himself, and they actually do look that good. You will feel a little bit guilty opening them. I just literally wanted to frame mine, put them in a frame and stick them on the wall. Inside each set it does include a booklet that showcases other army painting products and some like little hints and tips for their guides, a masterclass booklet explaining how these paints integrate into the triad system, and then obviously the crown jewel of this is an exclusive signed artwork from John himself, and this is the thing that you really do want to take out and frame it, which is what I'm going to definitely do right after this review. There's been no expense spared here. You can tell that the actual packaging is a premium quality, which does make it a must-have for most of the GRIMDARK enthusiasts and collectors alike. Now, it's all good having all this fancy packaging and John Blanch's name attached to them, but the real question is, are these paints any good? And we're going to be putting these paints to the test by painting an entire miniature using only these paints. And now for someone like me who's used to using a mix of oils, enamels and a wide variety of other crazy techniques, this is going to be a bit of a challenge, but it's going to force me to think creatively and try some new approaches. So to start with, I did a basic prime and a white zenithal on this miniature, and the first thing that did struck me was the colours themselves, and what I enjoyed about laying down some of these base colours was the fact that these colours chosen here did make me think about the Blanchitsu style, which I think is a bonus for people wanting to get into the GRIMDARK style, and you'll immediately be hit by the dark, warm tones available to you, and this will lead into less temptation to go and grab some additional colours. Each of the dropper bottles comes in an 18mm size with 2 preloaded mixing balls, which is good because it makes it easier for shaking and mixing up those paints, and these bottles are also clearly labelled to show you where each colour fits within the triad system. And the triad system, in its simplest term, it's just a simplified colour, and it just helps you select your colours for highlights and shading. From just applying the first few colours and the first few applications, it's really clear that these colours are rich in pigment and the coverage is excellent even on a white primer, and they do apply really smoothly, unlike some of the other brands out there where you have to apply layer after layer just to build up that opacity. These go on really good without any effort. They apply really smooth and easy even when they're not thinned, and if you do decide to thin them as well, they held up beautifully, none of the pigments came apart, and this allowed for some nice transparent layering and even some glazing. When it comes to acrylic paints, I typically like two things from my style of painting. One, I like high pigment and good coverage for blocking out some base colours, which in the past AK Gen 3 paints were my choice for this. Then for building up highlights, I like the paints from Citadel. This is because these tend to be a little bit more transparent and I can build up these layers slowly, adding some scratches or some glazes and some different effects. But for the Gen 3, the AK paints, I weren't able to do that because the pigment were too strong. It just didn't really work like the Citadel ones. However, for these paints, I have noticed when thinning them, they did allow me to build up thinner transparent layers without the pigment breaking apart, and I was even able to glaze some of the colours onto the skin. Now I know some of the hardcore professional painters out there will be saying, well, if you paint correctly and apply it in the correct manner, then you won't have this problem, and that, you know, that's fine. But for newer people starting out, or someone like myself who openly admits I'm not the best painter, then this is a plus side for these paints. For years I've searched for paints that could do both, and finally these ones have delivered. Moving on to testing the metallics now, and Emperor's Gold is a beautifully warm tone and it's rich and striking without being overly bright, making it a perfect tone for regal and worn golden details. Heavy Metal, on the other hand, offers an excellent base tone for silver metallics, both applied incredibly smooth with fantastic coverage that required minimal effort to achieve an even coat. Now, after layering down the base tones, I moved into one of my favourite stages, which is the unifying washes. This step was both fun and challenging at the same time, as it required a shift from my usual technique of using oils and enamels and the reductive method. Instead, I turned to the washes included in the set to add a grimy, dirty feel to the miniature. For the skin, I used Warm Skin Shade, a beloved favourite amongst the Army Painter fans, and people will be excited to see its return. It flowed really good into the recesses, enhancing the natural shadows and textures without overwhelming the base colours. For the bulk of the miniature, I tested out GRIMDARK Shadow, and this was a wash I was particularly eager to try, and this black-brown mix is incredibly versatile and feels tailor-made for GRIMDARK projects. It flows smoothly into recesses without staining the surrounding areas, which is something that I have found with some alternative brands. I thinned it a little bit with water just to experiment, and this just allowed it to flow into some more of the areas and allowed me to control the intensity of the pigment itself. What really stood out about GRIMDARK Shadow is how closely it resembles Citadel's Rattling Grime. This is, if you know me on this channel, it's a favourite paint of mine, which I always wished was in a wash form and not a contrast paint, and now I have it. But this is perfect for adding some depth and contrast and the grimy aesthetic, and dare I say it, I can see this easily replacing Citadel's non-oil, as it offers some superior tones, and it actually goes on a lot better than the non-oil as well. The application of it is 10 times better. One thing that's always annoyed me in the past about acrylic washes is they often do carry the risk of drying on an unwanted satin or glossy finish, especially, and that don't really work for the GRIMDARK style unless you're trying to achieve that tone. But this stayed true to form, and it did dry matte or a light satin finish depending on how heavy I applied the application. Despite as well the quick drying times of acrylics, these washes remained manipulatable, giving me plenty of time to move them around and remove any of the excess, and then I could even refine and add some streaks before they set. For some added depth, I used Turnbull Turquoise Speed Paint on the metallics, and this was to add a cool tone and make it contrast with the warmer fabric palette. I applied it on just the metals, but also on the lower edges of the cloth, where it created some subtle darker shadows and grime-like build-up. When it came to adding some gore to this miniature, I turned to the speed paint Blood Moon Red, and I speckled this across its weapons and skulls for some fresh blood effects, and then I mixed it with some of the GRIMDARK shadow to create a darker aged blood look. Although I'm not a seasoned speed painter, experimenting with these paints in a non-traditional way was quite satisfying actually. Then I added some highlights by blending and mixing the paints to create some new tones, and the colours are incredibly flexible, allowing for some smooth transitions and natural looking highlights, and just feel free to experiment with adding some of the different browns to some of the other colours and the yellows, and this will help you create some different tones but still staying within that colour palette. And that final step did pull everything together, and it just gave the miniature some added depth and dimensions. And to wrap up this miniature, I just wanted to add some final effects to it, and this is one of the paints that I really wanted to talk about, and that was Grim Rust. And I only use this on the metallics, and originally I thought this was just going to be one of those standard acrylic claimed special effect rust washes that most companies sell. And as this one was the last one of the paints that I applied, and whilst it was drying, I started to set up for my B-roll footage, and whilst I was filming some of the close-up shots, and I was like paying more attention to that actual part of the miniature, it was you know, when I was looking closely at where I'd applied that rust, it was at this point my head literally fell off. I was absolutely gobsmacked at the final finish of that rust effect, and originally thought I was looking at some Dirty Downs rust, and I've got no idea how they've made it or how it works. But the variation that you can see here and the tiny granular effects that you get from it absolutely blew my head to pieces. It genuinely looks like Dirty Downs rust, and this is something I definitely need to pay more attention to and play with more in the future, as this paint, if it does this, then you know it's absolutely unreal. And army paint, I'm not sure if you can do this in a darker colour, but if this were a bit more like a darker browny orange as well, these two rust paints it'd just be unbelievable. Like when I saw it, I was like, what the hell is this? So now I've completed this miniature and I've had time to experiment and play with the paints themselves. Now comes the crunch time. What is my verdict on these paints? Who are the for? Are they worth it? And does it truly bring something to the table? Now I did sit and I did think quite a lot about this, and as more like myself, as a more experienced GRIMDARK painter, someone that's accustomed to using alternative products like oils and enamels and a plethora of alternative techniques, I could easily lean towards saying, you know, stick to what you know, just buy some enamels, it's not true GRIMDARK, and so on and so forth. Although all my channel is based on pushing people to explore these techniques, as these methods often have a more realistic, gritty aesthetic of GRIMDARK, and they do come with their own pros and cons, but that's a topic for another video. And I am naturally going to lean more towards the way that I currently paint and using the oils and enamels. You know, my whole channel is built around teaching people and learning people how to use these amazing products and transform the way that you paint. But I think it would be disingenuous of me to bash Army Painter for those reasons, and I have to take these products at face value and review them for what they are. Ultimately, it comes down to personal preference and what works for you. So who are these paints for? In my view, these sets cater to both beginners and seasoned GRIMDARK painters, and for the beginners, if you're new to GRIMDARK painting or want to explore fresh created colour palettes that naturally lean into the gritty, grimy aesthetic, then this is an excellent starting point. These paints are ideal for anyone who prefers to stick to acrylics, and these sets make achieving a GRIMDARK look accessible and straightforward. For experienced painters, these sets are a fantastic addition to an already robust toolkit, and as someone who uses a combination of washes, speed paints, acrylics and enamels in my tutorials, I can confidently say these paints will be a great new addition. They integrate seamlessly with other mediums and provide unique tones that complement more advanced techniques. Now for myself and my own opinion, I did find these sets enjoyable, and it is very different to my standard application of painting. However, occasionally in my spare time I do paint like this, and I do it to find some new products, experiment new techniques and refine my brush control. The combination of washes, speed paints and metallics made this feel fresh and creative with the John Blanch colour palette, and it pushed me to explore new techniques and approaches to add to my toolbox. Some of my favourites from the set include Blanched Berry, Voodoo Shade, Grimdark Shadow, and of course the unbelievable Grim Rust. These sets did exceed my expectations, performing brilliantly in every application, and I'm especially excited to dive deeper into the Army Painter's Fanatic range. So if you're watching this, Army Painter, can I please have one of the mega paint sets, one of the big sets please? But in conclusion and my final thoughts, yes, the paints are absolutely fantastic acrylic paints, some of the best I've actually ever used. Obviously the artwork on the box is truly inspiring, everything that you do get inside. But whether you're beginning your journey into the grimdark style or maybe want to explore additional products in the future, then this is the perfect set. As well, if you're a seasoned painter in the grimdark style looking to expand your arsenal, there's something in these sets for everyone. And let's not forget as well, it's John Blanche. The man is a legend, and these sets are a testament to his legacy and vision. In the future, I can only hope that they do expand upon it, maybe a volume 3 with even more unique paints and palettes to explore. And when it comes to the grimdark style, there's always room for innovation and expansion. So I'd like to thank Army Painter for sending me these sets. I believe by the time this video is out on the 10th, these are available for pre-order, and there will be a link in the description below so you can pre-order these paints. Let me know in the comments section below, will you be grabbing one of these sets for yourself? And if you are interested in the grimdark style and want to check out some cool tutorials, then head over to my channel. Remember to hit that like button, be a subscriber, and until next time guys, I've been Nate the Feral Painter, and I will catch you in my next video.